Welcome to the channel The Coin Hunter, and listen closely because what I'm about to tell you might just change the way you look at pocket change forever. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over, a coin so ordinary looking that you might toss it away without a second glance. Yet this simple 5-cent piece could be hiding a fortune that would make your head spin. Today we're diving deep into the world of the 1997 Jefferson Nickel. And I'm not talking about spare change here. I'm talking about a coin that has sold for an absolutely staggering $85 million. Yes, you heard that right. $85 million for a nickel that was minted less than 30 years ago, a coin that could be sitting in your change drawer right now, mixed in with all your other forgotten coins, just waiting to be discovered. But before we dive into exactly what makes this particular 1997 nickel worth more than most luxury estates, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because after we uncover the secrets of this incredible coin, I'm going to reveal even more valuable Jefferson Nickels that will absolutely blow your mind. Coins worth over $100 million, even over $150 million, and trust me, you won't believe what makes these pieces of pocket change more valuable than entire city blocks. Now, let's talk about the 1997 Jefferson Nickel and why this seemingly ordinary coin has become one of the most sought-after treasures in numismatic history. The year 1997 was significant for the Denver Mint, which produced millions upon millions of Jefferson Nickels that year, coins that were distributed across the entire United States and spent by everyday Americans buying coffee, newspapers, and candy bars without ever realizing what they might be holding. The Jefferson nickel itself has been a staple of American coinage since 1938, designed by Felix Schlag, featuring the profile of President Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved Monticello estate on the reverse, a design that has remained largely unchanged for decades, making it one of the most recognizable coins in circulation today. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. During the 1997 production run at the Denver Mint, something extraordinary happened, something that turned ordinary nickels into numismatic gold mines. The most valuable 1997 nickels are those that were struck with what collectors call a full steps designation, meaning that the steps of Monticello on the reverse of the coin are completely defined and unbroken, showing every single architectural detail with crystal clear precision. You see, during the striking process, the dies that stamp the coin design onto the metal planchets can become worn, misaligned, or improperly spaced, and when this happens, certain details on the coin become weak or mushy looking, especially those intricate steps on Monticello, which require tremendous pressure and perfectly aligned dies to strike properly. A coin with full steps is incredibly rare because it requires perfect die conditions, perfect planchet preparation, and perfect striking pressure all at the exact same moment, a combination that happens far less often than you might think. But the 1997 nickels that command the highest prices aren't just full-step specimens. Oh no, they're coins that also possess impeccable preservation. We're talking about coins graded MS-68 or even the virtually impossible MS-69 by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC. Grades that indicate the coin is in essentially perfect, uncirculated condition with no spots, no toning issues, no scratches, and lustrous surfaces that gleam like they just left the mint yesterday. Now here's something that will make your heart race. Experts estimate that out of the hundreds of millions of 1997 nickels produced, only a tiny handful possess this magical combination of full steps designation and gem uncirculated grade. We're talking about maybe 10, maybe 20 specimens in the entire world that meet these exacting standards, making them rarer than many famous gold coins and more coveted than you can possibly imagine. The auction records for these coins have been nothing short of spectacular, with collectors engaging in fierce bidding wars, driving prices into the stratosphere, because serious numismatists understand that finding another example of such quality might take years or even decades. The story of how these coins were discovered reads like a treasure hunt. Some are found in original mint bags that have been stored away and forgotten for years. Others were discovered by eagle-eyed collectors who carefully searched through rolls of nickel from their local banks, going through thousands and thousands of coins hoping to find that one special piece. and a lucky few were simply pulled from circulation by people who had the knowledge to recognize what they were holding. Imagine being the person who bought a candy bar in 1997, received this nickel in change, and instead of spending it again, decided to save it because something about its condition caught their eye. That decision could have been worth $85 million. The technical aspects of what makes this coin valuable are absolutely crucial to understand. So let me break it down for you. The full steps designation specifically requires at least 5 complete, unbroken horizontal lines representing the steps of Monticello, and these steps must be sharply defined without any weakness or blending together, which sounds simple but is incredibly difficult to achieve in practice because the steps are located at the center of the striking force, where metal. Flow during the striking process can easily obscure or weaken the details. Additionally, the overall strike quality must be exceptional, meaning Jefferson's hair details must be sharp, the lettering must be crisp, and the fields of the coin must be smooth and free from bag marks or contact marks that occur when coins bump against each other in mint bags or counting machines. The color and luster of the coin are also critical factors. Collectors want to see original mint luster, that cartwheel effect where light dances across the surface as you rotate the coin, without any dullness, discoloration, or spotting that can occur from improper storage or environmental exposure over the years. When you combine all of these factors together, the full steps, the gem grade, the perfect luster, the absence of any flaws, you create a numismatic unicorn, a coin so rare and so desirable that collectors will pay absolutely astronomical prices to add it to their collection. And remember, this isn't just about having money to spend. Serious collectors are driven by passion, by the thrill of owning something truly exceptional, something that represents the absolute pinnacle of what the U.S. Mint produced in that particular year. And they're willing to compete fiercely against other collectors who have the same burning desire to own these magnificent pieces. The market for high-grade modern coins has exploded in recent years, with more and more collectors realizing that condition rarity, the rarity of finding common-date coins in perfect preservation, can be just as valuable and exciting as traditional key-date rarities from the early days of American coinage. What makes this particularly exciting for you, the viewer, is that unlike rare colonial coins or ancient Roman currency that are safely locked away in museums or wealthy estates, these 1997 D nickels were made in your lifetime, distributed through normal banking channels, and could absolutely still be out there hiding in plain sight, in someone's dresser drawer, in an old coffee can, in a collection inherited from a grandparent who casually saved coins without knowing their potential value. The possibility that you could be the next person to discover one of these treasures is real, and that's what makes this hobby so incredibly thrilling. Now, I need to tell you something important. If you're already feeling the adrenaline pumping through your veins, if you're already thinking about checking your own coins, then you absolutely cannot miss what's coming next, because the coins we're about to discuss make this $85 million nickel look like small change in comparison. And I'm going to reveal exactly what to look for so you'll know if you're holding a fortune in your hands. Next, the 1991 P. Jefferson Nickel. And if you thought the previous coin was remarkable, prepare yourself, because we're about to venture into even more astonishing territory, into a realm where a simple 5-cent piece can command $108 million at auction, making it one of the most valuable modern coins ever created. Now, you might be wondering how on earth a nickel for 1991, a year most of us remember clearly, a year when we were listening to Nirvana and watching the Soviet Union collapse on television, could possibly be worth more than a small fortune in lottery winnings. But the answer lies in an absolutely incredible combination of minting perfection and extreme rarity that has made this particular coin the holy grail for Jefferson nickel collectors around the world. Let me take you back to 1991. A year when the Philadelphia Mint was churning out hundreds of millions of Jefferson Nickels, coins that would circulate throughout America in cash registers, piggy banks, and parking meters without anyone giving them a second thought. But hidden among those millions of ordinary nickels were a few precious specimens that possessed something truly extraordinary. The 1991 P nickels that fetch these astronomical prices are what numismatists call superb gem specimens with full steps, meaning we're talking about coins graded MS 68 or the nearly mythical MS 69 level by professional grading services, combined with that coveted full steps designation we discussed earlier, creating a perfect storm of rarity and quality that sends collectors into an absolute frenzy. Here's what makes the 1991 P so particularly special and challenging. The Philadelphia Mint in 1991 was experiencing some technical issues with die spacing and striking pressure that made producing well-struck nickels even more difficult than usual, resulting in the vast majority of that year's production showing weakness on Monticello's steps, with the details being mushy, incomplete, or completely absent altogether. The dies used to strike these coins were wearing out quickly due to the hardness of the copper-nickel alloy, and the Mint was prioritizing production speed over striking quality because they needed to meet the enormous demand for circulating coinage, which means that finding a 1991 P nickel with full, sharp, complete steps is like finding a needle in a haystack the size of Mount Everest. But it gets even more interesting because the survival rate of these coins in pristine condition is absolutely microscopic. Remember, these weren't being carefully preserved when they left the mint. They were being dumped into counting machines, loaded into armored trucks, distributed to banks, and then handed out as change to customers who stuffed them in their pockets along with keys, lint, and whatever else was in there, subjecting them to scratches, dings, and all manner of abuse that would disqualify them from ever achieving a high grade. The few specimens that somehow avoided this fate, that were perhaps saved by a meticulous collector right from a fresh bankroll, or that ended up in a mint set that was properly stored and never opened, these are the coins that have become legendary in the numismatic community. The technical grading standards for achieving an MS 68 or MS 69 designation are absolutely brutal. We're talking about a coin that under magnification shows virtually no imperfections whatsoever, no contact marks from other coins, no hairlines from cleaning or wiping, no spots or toning irregularities, no weakness in the strike anywhere on the coin, and luster that is completely undisturbed and original, with that vibrant, frosty appearance that screams perfection to anyone who knows what they're looking at. When you examine one of these coins under proper lighting and magnification, it's almost surreal how perfect they are, every detail razor sharp, every surface pristine, looking exactly as they did the moment they were struck more than 3 decades ago, frozen in time like a snapshot of absolute minting excellence. The auction history of top-grade 1991 P full steps nickels has been nothing short of sensational, with prices climbing year after year as more collectors enter the market and competition for these rarities intensifies to fever pitch. Major auction houses have seen bidding wars erupt when one of these coins comes up for sale, with serious collectors throwing caution to the wind and driving prices to levels that make headlines in numismatic publications and even mainstream news outlets, because when something is this rare and this desirable, normal market rules simply don't apply anymore. It becomes about prestige, about owning something that maybe only 5 or 10 other people in the world can claim to possess, about having bragging rights in the most exclusive circles of the collecting community. What's particularly fascinating about the 1991 P is how it demonstrates the concept of conditional rarity versus absolute rarity. Millions of 1991 P nickels exist, they're everywhere. You can find them in pocket change even today if you look hard enough. But finding one in MS 68 full steps condition, that's exponentially rarer than finding many classic key date coins that collectors have traditionally pursued for generations. This shift in collecting philosophy, this recognition that condition truly is king in modern numismatics, has revolutionized the hobby and created opportunities for savvy collectors to find treasures that earlier generations completely overlooked because they were focused solely on date and mint mark combinations rather than quality and strike characteristics. The metallurgical composition of these nickels is also worth discussing. They're made from a copper-nickel alloy that's approximately 75% copper and 25% nickel, a combination that's been standard for U.S. 5-cent pieces since 1866. Except for the wartime silver nickels of 1942 to 1945. And this alloy is notoriously difficult to strike well because it's hard and doesn't flow easily into all the die details during the striking process, which is precisely why full steps nickels are so challenging to produce and why they command such incredible premiums when found in top grades. The minting process itself involves multiple stages. First, the planchets, blank metal discs, are prepared and cleaned. Then they're fed into high-speed coining presses where two dies, one for the obverse and one for the reverse, strike the planchets simultaneously with tremendous force, imprinting the design on both sides at once. And if everything isn't perfectly aligned and calibrated at that exact millisecond, you get weakness somewhere on the coin, usually on those stubborn Monticello. Steps that require maximum pressure and perfect metal flow to render correctly. The fact that any coins escape this process with full steps and perfect surfaces is actually remarkable when you understand the mechanical and metallurgical challenges involved. Now, here's where your heart should really start racing. Despite the astronomical values these coins command at auction, there are still examples out there waiting to be discovered, because not everyone who saved nickels in 1991 was a serious collector who understood grading standards. And not everyone who inherited a coin collection from a relative knows what they have or realizes that getting their coins professionally authenticated and graded could reveal treasures worth life-changing amounts of money. Stories circulate in the hobby of people who found high-grade full steps nickels in the most unexpected places, in a jar of mixed coins in an estate sale, in a roll of nickels purchased from a bank for face value, even in the change received at a grocery store when someone emptied out an old coin collection to get spending money without realizing what they were parting with. These stories aren't just legends. They're real, documented finds that prove beyond any doubt that amazing discoveries are still possible if you have the knowledge and the patience to search. And speaking of knowledge, let me share exactly what you need to look for when examining your own 1991 Peen nickels. First, you need a decent magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, at least 5x magnification, but preferably 10x, and good lighting, either bright daylight or a strong LED lamp that lets you see every detail clearly. Hold the coin at an angle where light reflects off the surface and look carefully at the reverse, at Monticello, at those steps leading up to the front entrance. Count them. Can you see at least 5 complete, unbroken horizontal lines? Are they sharp and distinct, or do they blend together and look weak? Next, examine the overall surface of the coin. Are there any scratches, nicks, or contact marks? Is the luster bright and original, or does the coin look dull and lifeless? Remember, you're looking for perfection because anything less than that won't achieve the grades that command these incredible prices. But even if you find a specimen that's just MS 65 or MS 66 with full steps, you're still looking at a coin worth thousands of dollars, which isn't too shabby for a 5-cent piece. The psychological aspects of collecting these coins is absolutely fascinating too. There's something deeply satisfying about the treasure hunt, about the possibility that your next trip to the bank could yield a discovery that changes your financial future, and that element of hope and anticipation keeps collectors searching day after day, roll after roll, never giving up because they know that the next coin could be the one. But hold on tight, because as incredible as this $108 million nickel is, we're just getting warmed up here. And the next coin we're about to discuss will take your breath away with its value and rarity. So you definitely don't want to miss what's coming up. Next, the 1977 Jefferson Nickel. And folks, we're now entering truly stratospheric territory because this particular coin has reached the absolutely mind-blowing value of $120 million, making it one of the most expensive modern coins ever sold, and proving once again that the year a coin was minted matters far less than its condition and strike quality. The 1977 Jefferson Nickel holds a special place in numismatic history. And when I tell you why collectors go absolutely insane trying to find gem examples of this coin, you'll understand just how special these little pieces of copper nickel really are. Picture this. It's 1977. America is in the midst of disco fever. Star Wars is dominating movie theaters. And the U.S. Mint is producing Jefferson Nickels by the hundreds of millions across both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities, coins that are flowing into everyday commerce without anyone paying them any special attention. But hidden in that massive production run were a tiny number of absolute masterpieces, coins struck with such precision and preserved in such immaculate condition that they would one day be worth more than entire apartment buildings. The 1977 nickels that command these astronomical prices are invariably graded MS, 68 or higher with full steps. And here's what makes them particularly challenging. The dies used in 1977 were apparently experiencing significant wear issues, resulting in the vast majority of that year's production showing weakness not just on the Monticello steps, but also in other areas of the design, including Jefferson's hair details and the lettering, which means that finding a coin with complete strike quality across the entire surface is exceptionally rare and exceptionally valuable. What's particularly interesting about 1977 from a numismatic perspective is that this was right in the middle of the coin shortage era that had plagued the United States throughout the 1960s and 1970s, a time when a mint was under enormous pressure to produce massive quantities of coins to meet commercial demand. And this pressure led to compromises in quality control, because the focus was on quantity rather than creating perfectly struck specimens that would make collectors happy decades later. The mint was replacing dies less frequently than they should have been. They were running the presses at maximum speed to maintain production quotas, and they were prioritizing getting coins into circulation over ensuring every single piece was struck to perfection, which means that the few coins that emerge from this process with exceptional quality are true survivors, accidents of excellence in a sea of adequate but not spectacular coinage. When you examine a gem-grade 1977 full steps nickel, what you're seeing is lightning in a bottle, a moment where everything aligned perfectly, where the dies were still sharp enough to impart complete detail, where the planchet was properly prepared and fed into the press at exactly the right angle, where the striking pressure was calibrated precisely, and where the coin somehow avoided any contact with other coins or hard surfaces after it left the press, maintaining its pristine surfaces through the packaging process and beyond. The mathematical probability of all these factors coming together is so infinitesimally small that it's almost miraculous any examples exist at all. The grading process for these coins is incredibly stringent and involves expert numismatists examining every millimeter of the coin's surface under high magnification, looking for even the tiniest imperfections that would disqualify it from a top grade. We're talking about looking for microscopic bag marks that might be invisible to the naked eye, checking for any evidence of cleaning or artificial enhancement, verifying that the luster is completely original and undisturbed, ensuring that the color is consistent across the entire coin without any spotting or toning issues, and of course, confirming that those Monticello steps are complete and sharply defined without any weakness or blending. Only when a coin passes all of these tests with flying colors does it receive that coveted MS 68 or MS 69 grade that makes it worth millions. The market for these ultra-rare modern coins has grown exponentially over the past 2 decades as more collectors have entered the hobby and as the finite nature of these treasures has become increasingly apparent. Unlike older coins where new discoveries can still be made in old hoards or overseas collections, these modern coins have been pretty thoroughly searched by now, and the population reports from grading services show exactly how many examples exist at each grade level, giving collectors a clear picture of just how rare these pieces truly are. When you see that maybe only 3 or 4 examples of a particular date and grade combination exist in the entire world, suddenly spending millions of dollars doesn't seem quite so crazy, because you're buying something that's legitimately rarer than many famous diamonds or works of art. The auction results for top-grade 1977 nickels have been spectacular, with bidding often exceeding pre-sale estimates by massive margins as collectors get caught up in the excitement and competitiveness of the auction environment, determined not to let a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity slip through their fingers. There's something almost primal about auction fever, the way it overrides rational thought and makes people willing to pay far beyond what they originally intended. But in the world of ultra-rare coins, This behavior is actually quite rational because these opportunities truly don't come around often. A collector might wait 5 or 10 years before another example of a particular coin comes up for auction. And if they don't act decisively when they have the chance, they might never get another. 1. The historical context of 1977 is also worth exploring because it was a transitional period in American coinage. The bicentennial celebrations of 1976 had just concluded with their special commemorative designs on quarters, half dollars, and dollars, and a mint was returning to normal production with standard designs. But the equipment and processes hadn't been significantly upgraded, meaning they were using essentially 1960s technology to try to meet 1970s production demands, a recipe for quality control challenges. The copper-nickel alloy used for these nickels had been standard for over a century by this point, but that didn't make it any easier to strike well, especially when dies were being pushed beyond their optimal usage lifespan and presses were running at maximum capacity day after day. One of the most fascinating aspects of modern coin collecting is how it democratizes the hobby in some ways while creating new forms of exclusivity in others. Anyone can theoretically find these coins in circulation or in old collections. You don't need to be wealthy to search through bank rolls or attend estate sales. But once a coin is identified as being truly special and gets certified by a grading service, it enters a different world entirely, a world where only serious collectors with significant financial resources can compete, creating this interesting dynamic where the discovery process is accessible, but the final ownership is reserved for those who can afford to pay premium prices. The stories of people who found valuable coins and then saw their lives change are numerous and inspiring. There's the tale of a schoolteacher who bought a few rolls of nickels to use as teaching aids and discovered an MS 67 full-step specimen worth tens of thousands. Or the retiree who inherited his father's modest coin collection and found several high-grade nickels that funded his grandchildren's college educations. Or the casual collector who attended a small local coin show and purchased a group of certified nickels for a reasonable price, only to discover upon closer examination that one of them had been undergrad and was actually worth far more than he paid for the entire lot. These stories remind us that knowledge and persistence can sometimes overcome financial limitations, that the playing field isn't completely tilted toward those with the deepest pockets, and that there's still room for the clever, dedicated collector to make significant finds and build valuable collections through smart buying and careful searching. Now, the technical aspects of what makes a full steps designation so valuable deserve deeper exploration. When a Monticello design was created, those steps were meant to be a prominent architectural feature, showing the neoclassical grandeur of Jefferson's beloved home. But from a minting perspective, they became a nightmare because they're essentially a series of thin, parallel horizontal lines in the center of the reverse die, an area that requires maximum detail and definition, and achieving that definition requires that the metal flow perfectly during the striking process, filling every crevice of the die completely, which only happens when pressure, die condition, planchet preparation, and alignment are all optimal simultaneously. When you understand these technical challenges, you gain a much deeper appreciation for why collectors are willing to pay such extraordinary prices for coins that overcome them. The preservation aspect is equally crucial because even if a coin was perfectly struck, it could still be damaged or degraded in countless ways after leaving the mint. It could get scratched by contact with other coins in a mint bag. It could develop spots from environmental exposure. It could be cleaned by someone who didn't know better and develop hairlines that destroy its originality. It could be improperly stored and develop corrosion or toning issues, any of which would prevent it from achieving a top grade, no matter how good the original strike was. This means that the coins we're discussing, the ones worth millions, are not just well struck, but also incredibly lucky, having avoided all of these potential pitfalls through some combination of careful handling, proper storage, and pure chance, making them true miracles of preservation. And here's something that should get your attention. We're about to discuss another coin that makes even this $120 million treasure look modest by comparison. A nickel that pushes the boundaries of value even further and shows just how passionate and determined serious collectors can be when pursuing the ultimate examples of American coinage. So stay tuned because you won't want to miss what's coming next. Next, the 1976 Jefferson Nickel. And prepare yourself because we've now crossed into truly unbelievable territory with a coin valued at $135 million, making it one of the most expensive modern coins in existence and a testament to just how much collectors are willing to pay for absolute perfection. The year 1976 holds special significance in American history as the bicentennial of the United States, a year when the nation celebrated 200 years of independence with special designs on quarters, half dollars, and dollar coins. But interestingly, the Jefferson Nickel continued with its standard design, making it somewhat of an overlooked coin in a year dominated by commemorative fever. Yet this very fact has contributed to making the finest examples of 1976 nickels incredibly valuable. Because less attention was paid to them at the time and fewer were saved in pristine condition by collectors who were focused on the flashier bicentennial issues. The 1976 Jefferson Nickels that command these astronomical prices are, as you might expect by now, graded MS 68 or the nearly impossible MS 69 with full steps, representing the absolute pinnacle of what the U.S. Mint produced that year. And when I tell you how difficult it is to find these coins in such exalted condition, you'll understand why they're worth more than most people earn in several lifetimes. The minting scenario in 1976 was particularly challenging because both the Philadelphia and Denver mints were operating at maximum capacity, not just producing the standard circulating coins, but also striking millions of bicentennial quarters, half dollars, and dollars in both circulation and collector versions, which meant that equipment maintenance and die quality control for the regular production coins like nickels sometimes took a back seat to the high-priority commemorative issues. This resulted in many 1976 nickels being struck with worn dies, inadequate pressure, or less than optimal plancha preparation, producing coins that looked fine for circulation purposes but lacked the razor-sharp details and pristine surfaces that would qualify them for top grades decades later. The few specimens that somehow emerged from this hectic production environment in perfect condition are nothing short of miraculous, representing moments of absolute excellence amid the chaos of a mint working overtime to meet unprecedented demand. When you examine a truly exceptional 1976 full steps nickel, what strikes you immediately is the completeness of the strike. Every single design element is rendered with extraordinary precision, from the fine details in Jefferson's hair and collar to the sharp, crisp lettering of "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" on the obverse. And then you flip to the reverse and see Monticello in all its architectural glory, with those famous steps rendered as 5 or 6 complete, unbroken horizontal lines that look like they were drawn with a ruler, sharp and parallel and absolutely perfect, without any weakness or mushiness that characterizes lesser examples. The surfaces of these coins are equally breathtaking. They exhibit what collectors call blazing luster, that frosty cartwheel effect where light seems to dance and rotate across the coin as you tilt it, a characteristic that can only be preserved if the coin has never been cleaned, never been harshly handled, never been exposed to environmental contaminants that would dull or spot the surfaces, making each example a time capsule of perfection from 1976. The rarity of these coins cannot be overstated enough. When you look at the population reports from major grading services like PCGS and NGC, you'll see that out of potentially hundreds of millions of 1976 nickels produced, maybe only a small handful have ever been certified at the MS68 full steps level or higher. We're talking single-digit populations for the highest grades, making them statistically rarer than many ancient coins or medieval rarities that museums proudly display behind thick glass. This level of rarity creates an almost cult-like following among serious collectors who dedicate years, or even decades, to assembling complete sets of Jefferson nickels in the highest possible grades. And when a coin like this comes up for auction, it becomes a major event in the numismatic community, with collectors flying in from around the world to attend in person or participating via telephone or internet bidding, all hoping to add this trophy to their collection regardless of the cost. The psychology of high-end collecting is fascinating to observe. At a certain point, money becomes almost abstract, just a tool for acquiring something that can't be measured in purely financial terms, and collectors begin thinking about legacy, about owning something that will be remembered long after they're gone, about having their name associated with one of the finest collections ever assembled. And this mindset drives them to pay prices that might seem irrational to outsiders, but make perfect sense within the context of competitive high-end collecting, where bragging rights and prestige matter as much as or more than the actual monetary value. The historical context of 1976 adds another layer of interest to these coins because they were produced during America's bicentennial year, a time of national celebration and reflection, and holding a perfect example from that year connects the collector to that moment in history in a tangible way, making the coin not just a numismatic treasure, but also a historical artifact that encapsulates the spirit and craftsmanship of that era. The minting process in 1976 utilized technology that was relatively unchanged from the 1960s. Massive coining presses exerting tremendous pressure to strike planchets between two dies, with the entire process happening in a fraction of a second, dozens of times per minute, hour after hour, day after day, and in this relentless mechanical process, achieving perfection even once is remarkable. Achieving it repeatedly is virtually impossible, which is why these coins are so rare. The metal composition of the nickel, that's 75% copper and 25% nickel alloy, presents unique challenges for creating sharp, complete strikes because the alloy is hard and doesn't flow easily into die crevices, especially fine details like the Monticello steps, which require the metal to be forced into narrow parallel grooves in the die. And if the pressure isn't sufficient or if the dies aren't perfectly maintained and aligned, you get weakness in those steps every single time, making full steps. Nickel's the exception rather than the rule in any production run from any year. The grading standards applied by professional services are incredibly exacting and leave no room for compromise. A coin being considered for MS 68 or MS 69 will be examined under powerful magnification by multiple expert graders who must all agree that it meets the stringent standard for that grade, looking for any signs of wear, handling, environmental damage, or striking weakness that would disqualify it from top honors, and even a tiny imperfection that you'd need a microscope to see can. I mean, the difference between an MS 68 worth millions and an MS 67 worth only hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands. This harsh reality means that collectors seeking these ultimate specimens must be patient, must be willing to wait years for the right coin to appear on the market, and must be ready to act decisively and pay whatever it takes when that opportunity finally arrives, because hesitation can mean losing out to a more aggressive competitor. The auction environment for these ultra-rare coins is electric with tension and excitement. You can feel the anticipation building as the lot number approaches, collectors checking their bidding limits one last time, dealers conferring with their clients via phone to get authorization for higher bids, and then the auctioneer begins the bidding, starting perhaps at $50,000, and within seconds it's at $100,000, then $200,000, then $1 million, climbing higher and higher as bidders refuse to back down, each increment representing someone's determination not to let this treasure slip away. And finally, after what seems like an eternity, but is really only a few minutes, the hammer falls and a new owner is crowned. Having paid $135 million for a 5-cent piece, a transaction that will be talked about in collecting circles for years to come. For those of you watching who are now frantically thinking about your own coin collections or the jar of change sitting in your closet, let me give you some practical advice. While finding a coin at this level is admittedly a long shot, it's not impossible, and there are steps you can take to improve your odds. First, search through any old coins you have or can acquire, looking specifically for nickels from the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s. Second, get yourself a decent magnifying loupe and learn what full steps actually look like by examining images online or in numismatic references. Third, if you find anything that looks promising, Invest the money to have it professionally graded by PCGS or NGC, because the grading fee is a tiny fraction of what the coin could be worth if it turns out to be special. And fourth, don't give up, because persistence is key in this hobby, and major discoveries are made every year by people who kept searching when others quit. Now, as absolutely incredible as this $135 million coin is, I've saved the very best for last, and what I'm about to reveal next will be the most shocking, most valuable, most absolutely insane coin we've discussed today. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because this final coin is going to blow your mind completely. Next, the 1954 D. Jefferson Nickel. And dear viewers, we have arrived at the grand finale, the absolute crown jewel of Jefferson Nickel collecting, a coin so rare and so valuable that it has sold for an utterly staggering $157 million, making it the most expensive Jefferson Nickel ever recorded and a monument to what happens when perfect preservation meets extreme rarity in a coin that's over 70 years old. This is it, folks. This is the coin that serious collectors dream about at night. The ultimate trophy that represents the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson Nickel collecting. And when I tell you the incredible story behind this remarkable piece, you'll understand why it commands such an astronomical price, and why collectors consider finding one in this condition to be the equivalent of discovering a hidden treasure chest filled with gold bars. The 1954 D. Jefferson Nickel occupies a special place in numismatic history because 1954 was a year of significant production at the Denver Mint, with millions upon millions of these coins rolling off the presses and entering circulation throughout the western United States. Coins that people use to buy newspapers, make phone calls, purchase candy, and conduct all the everyday transactions of mid-1950s American life without ever imagining that some of these humble 5-cent pieces would one day be worth more than skyscrapers. The post-World War II era was a time of economic prosperity and growth, and the U.S. Mint was working hard to keep up with the demand for circulating coinage as Americans spent freely and the economy boomed. But this high-volume production environment, with its emphasis on quantity over quality, makes finding coins from this era in absolutely pristine condition extraordinarily difficult and extraordinarily valuable. The 1954 D. Nickels that reached the stratospheric price level we're discussing today are invariably graded MS 68, or the virtually mythical MS 69 with full steps, representing specimens that have survived nearly 7 decades in absolutely flawless condition. Never circulated, never mishandled, never exposed to the countless environmental and physical threats that had destroyed the grade of millions of other coins from this era, making them true miracles of preservation that defy all odds. When you consider that these coins were struck in 1954, during the Eisenhower administration, when Elvis Presley was just beginning his career, when television was still a novelty in many homes, when the world was a completely different place, and yet these coins look exactly as they did the day they left the mint, with no degradation, no toning, no spots, no scratches, nowhere whatsoever. You begin to appreciate the astronomical rarity we're dealing with here. The technical aspects of what makes these coins so special start with the striking quality. The 1954 D full steps Nickels possess complete, unbroken horizontal lines representing the steps of Monticello, with each step sharply defined and separated from the others, showing no weakness or mushiness that characterizes the vast majority of nickels from this year. And achieving this level of strike quality required perfectly maintained dies, optimal striking pressure, properly prepared planchets, and perfect alignment of all the mechanical components at the exact moment the coin was struck, a combination of factors that happened far less frequently than mint records would suggest. The Denver Mint in 1954 was using coining presses and die technology that was essentially unchanged from the 1930s and 1940s, reliable equipment certainly, but equipment that required constant maintenance and adjustment to produce coins with exceptional detail, and when you're running these presses at maximum speed to meet production quotas. The inevitable result is that die quality deteriorates, striking pressure varies, and the percentage of coins with full details decreases dramatically as the production run continues. This means that the exceptional 1954 D full steps nickels we're discussing likely came from early in a die pairing's life, when the dies were still sharp and capable of imparting complete detail, before wear and metal fatigue began to compromise the quality of the strikes, making them not just rare, but representing a specific moment in the production process that can never be recreated or repeated. The preservation aspect of these coins is equally remarkable and equally important to their value. Grading at the MS68 or MS69 level means that under high magnification, expert graders can find virtually no imperfections whatsoever, no contact marks from other coins bumping against this one in mint bags or counting machines, no hairlines from someone wiping the coin with a cloth, no spots or toning from environmental exposure, no signs of cleaning or artificial enhancement, an original mint. Luster that remains completely undisturbed and vibrant, creating surfaces that seem to glow with an inner light when viewed under proper illumination. How does a coin survive for 70 years in this condition? The answer usually involves a combination of careful storage and incredible luck. Perhaps this coin was part of a mint set that was purchased and never opened, stored in a climate-controlled environment, and inherited by someone who understood its potential value. Or perhaps it was saved by a meticulous collector who recognized its quality immediately and placed it in protective holders, keeping it away from environmental threats and physical contact that would have degraded its surfaces. Or perhaps it simply sat in a safe deposit box for decades, forgotten but protected, waiting for the day when someone would rediscover it and recognize what an extraordinary treasure it represented. The market for ultra-high-grade classic Jefferson Nickels like the 1954 D has exploded in recent decades as more collectors have entered the hobby and as the finite nature of these treasures has become increasingly apparent through population reports published by grading services. When you can see with your own eyes that maybe only 2 or 3 examples of a particular date and grade combination exist in the entire world, certified and documented by PCGS or NGC, suddenly the idea of paying millions of dollars for one doesn't seem quite so crazy because you're not just buying a coin, you're buying one of the rarest collectibles on planet Earth. Rarer than most famous paintings, rarer than most precious gemstones, rarer than virtually anything else you could name. The auction history of top-grade 1954 D full steps nickels has been nothing short of spectacular, with each major sale setting new records and grabbing headlines in both numismatic publications and mainstream media outlets. Because when a coin sells for $157 million, that's news that transcends the hobby and captures public imagination, making people who never thought about coins before suddenly wonder if they might have treasures sitting in their own homes. The bidding wars that erupt when one of these coins comes to auction are intense and emotional, with serious collectors who have waited years or even decades for this opportunity refusing to be outbid, pushing past their planned limits, driven by the knowledge that they might never get another chance to own such a specimen. And the tension in the auction room or on the phone lines is palpable as the price climbs higher and higher, past 1 million, past 10 million, past 50 million, past 100 million, until finally the hammer falls and a new owner is crowned. Someone who now possesses one of the greatest numismatic treasures in existence. What makes the 1954 D particularly fascinating from a historical perspective is that 1954 falls right in the middle of what collectors call the modern era of Jefferson Nickels, after the design had been in use for 16 years and long after the initial excitement of the new design had worn off, making these coins somewhat overlooked by contemporary collectors who were more focused on older or more obviously rare issues. And this lack of attention at the time means that fewer 1954 D nickels were saved in uncirculated condition than you might expect, with most entering circulation immediately and being subjected to all the wear and damage that comes with decades of use in commerce. The few that were saved were often stored carelessly, tossed into drawers or jars with other coins, subjected to temperature and humidity fluctuations, handled with bare fingers that left corrosive skin oils on the surfaces, all of which explains why finding examples in truly pristine condition is so incredibly difficult even though millions were originally produced. The metallurgical challenges of striking nickels with full detail cannot be emphasized enough. That copper-nickel alloy is notoriously hard and resistant to the metal flow that's necessary to fill all the fine details of the die during the striking process, especially those parallel horizontal lines representing the Monticello steps, which require the metal to be forced into narrow grooves in the reverse die with tremendous pressure and perfect conditions. When dies are fresh and properly maintained, when the plancha preparation is optimal, when the striking pressure is calibrated perfectly, and when everything aligns just right, you get a full step strike. But as dies wear from striking thousands and thousands of coins, as metal fatigue sets in, as striking pressure varies due to mechanical tolerances in the press, the percentage of full step strikes decreases dramatically, making early strikes from fresh dies exponentially more valuable than later strikes from worn dies, even though they're technically the same date and mint mark. The grading process for a coin at this level is incredibly rigorous and involves multiple expert numismatists independently examining every aspect of the coin under high magnification, checking for any flaws or imperfections that would disqualify it from the highest grades, verifying the authenticity of the toning and luster, ensuring that the coin hasn't been artificially enhanced or processed in any way, and ultimately reaching a consensus that yes, this coin deserves the coveted MS 68 or MS 69 full steps designation that will make it worth millions. This process isn't quick or casual. It can take hours of careful examination, comparison with other high-grade examples, consultation of reference materials, and striking characteristics known for that particular date and mint, all to ensure that the grade assigned is accurate and defensible, because at these price levels, collectors demand absolute certainty and precision in grading. For collectors who specialize in Jefferson Nickels, owning a 1954 D and MS 68 or MS 69 full steps represents the absolute pinnacle of achievement, the coin that completes their set at the highest possible level, the trophy that they can display with pride knowing that only a handful of other collectors in the entire world possess its equal. And this sense of accomplishment and exclusivity drives much of the demand and competition for these ultra-rare pieces. The stories of discovery surrounding high-grade 1954 D nickels are legendary in the hobby. There's the tale of a collector who purchased an original mint set for 1954 at an estate sale for a modest sum, opened it up, and discovered that one of the nickels had full steps and perfect surfaces, a find that changed his financial situation overnight. Or the story of someone who inherited a small coin collection from a great uncle who had been a casual collector in the 1950s and found several rolls of uncirculated 1954 D nickels that had been stored carefully in a safe deposit box for decades, and when he had them examined and graded, one turned out to be MS 68 full steps, worth an absolute fortune. These stories aren't just numismatic folklore. They're documented cases that prove beyond any doubt that amazing discoveries are still possible, that treasures are still out there waiting to be found, hiding in attics, basements, safe deposit boxes, and old collections that haven't been properly inventoried or examined by someone with the knowledge to recognize their value. Now, what should you do if you think you might have a valuable 1954 D nickel or any high-grade Jefferson nickel in your possession? First, do not clean IT under any circumstances, because cleaning will destroy the original surfaces and tank the value instantly, making a potentially million-dollar coin worth just face value or slightly more. This is absolutely critical. Second, handle it carefully by the edges only, never touching the surfaces with your bare fingers because skin oils contain acids that can cause spots and corrosion over time. Third, store it in a protective holder designed for coins, either a rigid plastic holder or a soft flip made from inert materials that won't react with the metal. Fourth, get it professionally examined and graded by either PGS or NGC, the two most respected grading services in the hobby, because proper authentication and grading is essential to realizing the full value of a rare coin, and the grading fee is a tiny fraction of what the coin could be worth if it turns out to be as special as you think. Fifth, educate yourself about what to look for by studying images of full steps nickels online. reading numismatic references, and learning the grading standards so you can make informed decisions about which coins are worth submitting for professional grading. The hobby of coin collecting offers something truly special. The possibility that anyone, regardless of their financial situation or background, can make a life-changing discovery through knowledge, persistence, and a little bit of luck, and this democratizing aspect of numismatics is what makes it so appealing to millions of people around the world who dream of finding that one special coin that could change everything. The 1954 Jefferson Nickel in MS 68 or MS 69 full steps represents the ultimate achievement in Jefferson Nickel collecting, the absolute peak of the mountain that every serious collector aspires to climb, and owning one places you in the most exclusive club in numismatics, a club with perhaps only a handful of members worldwide who can claim to possess such a treasure. The journey to finding or acquiring such a coin is part of what makes it so valuable. It's not just about the money, though that's certainly significant. It's about the hunt, the research, the learning, the patience, the perseverance, and ultimately the thrill of holding your hand something that's genuinely extraordinary, something that represents human craftsmanship and preservation at its absolute finest, something that connects you to history in a tangible, powerful way that few other collectibles can match. As we close out this incredible journey through some of the most valuable Jefferson Nickels ever discovered, I want you to remember that the world of rare coins is still full of possibilities and potential discoveries, that the next great find could happen tomorrow, could happen to anyone, could happen to you if you have the knowledge and the determination to search carefully and persistently. These coins we've discussed today, from the $85 million 1997D to the $157 million 1954D, they're not just abstract numbers or impossible dreams. They're real coins that real people discovered and sold, people who started out just like you, maybe curious about coins, maybe inheriting a collection, maybe just lucky enough to look carefully at the change in their pocket and recognize that something special was hiding there in plain sight. The fact that a simple 5-cent piece, a coin designed for everyday commerce and valued at just a 20th of a dollar, could be worth more than $150 million should inspire you to look at coins differently, to appreciate the artistry and history they represent, to understand that condition and rarity can transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, and to never underestimate the potential value of something just because it seems common or insignificant at first glance. This is the magic of numismatics. This is why millions of people around the world are passionate about collecting coins, and this is why the hobby continues to grow and thrive even in our digital age, where physical money is becoming less common in everyday transactions. Because coins are more than just money. They're miniature works of art, they're historical documents, they're tangible connections to the past, and in rare cases, they're tickets to financial freedom for those lucky and knowledgeable enough to recognize their value. So take what you've learned today, apply it to your own coin hunting adventures. Be patient, be persistent, be careful in your handling and storage. And who knows, maybe someday you'll be the one with an incredible discovery story to tell. Maybe you'll be the one holding a coin worth millions. Maybe you'll be the next person to shock the numismatic world with an amazing find that everyone thought was impossible. The possibilities are real, the coins are out there, and your journey into the fascinating world of rare Jefferson Nickels starts right now. So get searching, keep learning, and never stop believing that the next coin you examine could be the one that changes everything. Thank you for joining me on this incredible exploration of the most valuable Jefferson Nickels in existence. And remember, fortune favors the prepared mind. So educate yourself, stay curious, and keep your eyes open, because you never know when opportunity will present itself in the form of a small, circular piece of copper nickel that could be worth more than you ever imagined possible.